A while ago, I had a conversation with a friend of mine here in Paraguay. She's a well-established business person, qualified lawyer, very astute. And we're talking about all the issues relating to foreigners coming and buying property here. We're talking about the pitfalls and the challenges and all of the things that I've observed and experienced ourselves. And in the course of the conversation, she said something to me that I found really profound and really useful. And that was that in order to do business in any country, in this case in Paraguay, it's really essential that you understand the mindset of the people that you're doing business with. At first I thought to myself, well, how can it really be that different? Business is business, isn't it? But she went on to explain that there is a concept here in Paraguay, or a phrase that is said when people do business and someone finds themselves in a situation where they lose out in the business transaction. It can be said that they gave themselves away. They did something that left themselves vulnerable, and the other party took advantage of that. Now, that happens everywhere in the world, of course. It's not solely applicable to Paraguay. But my own experience and the experience that I've seen of many others suggests that it is probably a concept that is more aptly applied to the way that business is done here. I think that doing business here is a more adversarial model than what it may be in the countries that I've come from. And a big part of that is because when you buy a property in the place that I previously resided, once you get the ball rolling, there are processes in place that really take it outside of the hands of both parties. There are safeguards and processes and protocols. There's all sorts of things that are built into the system that make it not bulletproof, but certainly make it very difficult for either party to take advantage of the other or to really go off the tracks too much. But that's not the case here in Paraguay. When you enter into a contract, you go to an escribano. The contract that you write for one property can be vastly different to the way that another escribano might write it for a property somewhere else. So it's not uncommon that you'll be faced with situations where, perhaps due to a deficiency in the way that an escribano has written the contract, one of the parties may find themselves in a vulnerable situation. Now, on the face of it, sometimes it can be seen as though the party who takes advantage of that is maybe behaving in an unethical manner. But what my friend explained to me is that that's also the case here to an extent, but there's also a degree of attitude that if you have left yourself open and the other party takes advantage of it, rather than it being a reflection on the other party, it can reflect also on you. You gave yourself away, you left yourself open, and in doing so, you've lost out. I reflected on our own experiences here, and I had to come to the conclusion that my friend was speaking absolute sense. But then I asked myself the question, well, how does someone not give themselves away? And clearly the only way that you can really not give yourself away is to know what you're doing. And how do you know that when you come to a country that's foreign to you? You haven't got the record, you haven't had the experience in buying properties here, you may not have the degree of social networks that you would otherwise have had, so you haven't heard all of the stories that have happened to your many other friends. That's a massive challenge when you move to any country, to work out how the game's played in that country. So I got to thinking about it and I thought, well, what's the best way to address this, and what's the most efficient way to help people in numbers get the information that they need so that they're not one of those people that is said to have given themselves away. So with that, I've come up with a short book or a long guide. It's 47 odd pages of information in regards to everything that I would say to somebody if they approached me and said, what do I need to do when looking at buying property in Paraguay in order to be not in a position of giving myself away. The viability of renting as opposed to buying. I've given a snapshot of the Paraguay real estate market, where to find properties here in Paraguay, the players involved, escribanas, lawyers, property finders, real estate agents, because the way that they operate here in some cases is quite different to the way that they would operate in countries that you might be in at the moment. And then I've gone on to talk about 8 different situations. They're fictional scenarios of people who are buying property or looking to buy property. And in each of these scenarios, there are fictional characters who take certain actions and go through certain transactions. And more often than not, these transactions somehow go wrong. And following each scenario, I've listed what I've learned from each of these scenarios, because even though they're fictional in this book that I've written, they're really not too far from the truth. And they're the sort of stories that I've heard on a regular basis since being here. And put it this way, if you read these stories and you take them on board and apply them when you're looking to buy property here in Paraguay, you'll be in a vastly better position than you were before you had learned about these stories. There's certain information and advice in this book that has saved people many thousands of dollars. There's also scenarios that reflect some situations that have actually occurred where people haven't taken advice, and likewise it's cost some people a vast amount of money. So with this book, I'm hoping that people can get a decent understanding, or at least a broad overview as to what they might encounter in the Paraguay property market, what they need to look out for, scenarios that could arise if they choose to take certain courses of action, and ways that they can better safeguard themselves. After you read this book, you will be in a situation where you'll have a realistic understanding of what can go right and what can go wrong, and how you need to perhaps position yourself to be best placed, not to be one of those that has fallen for the situation where you gave yourself away. We're in a new country now, the rules are different, the attitude to business is different, and we need to get up to the mark in terms of the way that things are done. If we're not going to give ourselves away, we need to understand what we're walking into, how things are done here, and the many subtle tricks and things that can happen here that can't happen in the place that you've come from. I don't propose that this book will be the single source of truth, or with it you'll be able to avoid every conceivable situation, because just when you think you know everything about the way things can go here in Paraguay in terms of buying property, something can always rise up to surprise you. But these 8 scenarios that I've detailed really do give a lot of different elements, and I think they cover a lot of the different issues that you may find yourself encountering when going into the process of buying property here in Paraguay. And what I ultimately hope is that with things like this book and other videos that we make, I just want to make life easier for people who are looking to buy here. I want to try and, in a very small way that we can, contribute to making the process simpler, more secure, because it's in nobody's interest when foreigners come to Paraguay and lose out. Everyone loses. It makes the whole property buying scene more insecure for everybody, because when scammers or opportunists take advantage of people who don't know the rules, those scammers just become more emboldened. The stories get bigger and there's more people out there who want to get their cut of the action. Another objective of this book and some of the videos that we've made is I'm hoping to try and encourage people who are coming here not to partake in the property bubble that has occurred here in, I believe, the past few decades. There's never an advantage to a country or to the people moving there for there to be a property bubble. Everybody loses out except the people that are making the money from it. Even if you have the money to come here and maybe pay more than what you should for a property, it still comes back on all of us, because you can look around at other countries to see that one of the primary issues and problems when countries have an influx of foreigners is that when a property bubble occurs, there is a level of resentment that inevitably arises amongst the people living here, because it's not nice. I've lived in a couple of countries that have had outrageous property bubbles, and unfortunately that's resulted in a situation where future generations are going to have to pay for that, and people are being locked out of the market. It's not good for anybody. So part of the book is devoted to that topic of how people are coming here and at times being wittingly or unwittingly convinced or manipulated into contributing to a bubble in the market. There's no need for it. Thankfully, this country hasn't fully fallen into that trap. Yes, there is bubbles in the market. There are ridiculous prices being asked for in different areas, and depending on the type of property and some other parameters. But there's also the opportunity to buy property at really reasonable prices in keeping with what is relatively normal for this country. We've got to make sure that we keep a lid on things, that we act responsibly, so that we keep in good stead with the people that also live here that need to buy property. They don't need to be trying to find their way in a property market that's been blown up by people coming in. And also, we don't want to have to deal with the fallout that comes with that. So we want to look back and be happy that we came and contributed positively, brought good things to the country. So I hope that this book is of use to somebody. There's a link below, you can download it. It's the price of a couple of cappuccinos, and I would encourage anyone that's thinking about buying property to consider checking it out, because unless you've been here for a while and spoken to a lot of people, there'll be things in this book that will be of a surprise to you, I think. And if only one of the little pieces of advice is useful to you, then there's a very good chance that it may save you in a very significant way. And that's what it's all about. So here's hoping that it's a blessing to somebody. You can see that it's quite a grey day here, quite grey and overcast. We're kind of enjoying the change actually. It's quite cold, but not too bad. Last winter really hit me by surprise, so I'm kind of enjoying having a jumper on and getting the heater on. It's a bit of a change from the very hot days that we have otherwise, but everything's ticking along well. We've got some things ticking along in the property situation that we will talk about hopefully in videos to come, and we're also working on a few other things and got a few other projects in mind that we're keen to talk about. We've been meeting a lot of good people. There's a lot of people still heading this way, particularly from places like Holland. Seems to be a lot of people coming at the moment. We're hearing from a lot of South Africans and others. A lot of cool people just looking to find a place outside of the insanity that's unfolding. And to date, we're pleased to announce that we are delighted with what we've traded up to here in Paraguay, and we look at what's going on around the world and feel very blessed to be where we are today. So here's hoping that that continues. So that's all I've got to say about that. I hope everyone's doing well out there, and until next time, take care. Ciao.